Welcome. Welcome to this gathering of the Manatee Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where for 60 years a diversity of faith, race, ethnicity, and sexual and gender identity have been honored by people of courage and vision. We are a covenanted community bound together by our belief in freedom of worship, love, and respect. If you are visiting with us this morning, we welcome you as our guests and extend an invitation to join us for refreshments and conversations after the service. I have two announcements this morning. The first one is by Randy McCrae. In your order of service today, there is an information sheet on the fellowship. It looks like this. Please take it with you and give it to a friend or a neighbor who you think might like to learn more about our fellowship and Unitarian Universalism in general. One of the best ways to publicize our fellowship is through word of mouth and direct contact by a member or friend of the fellowship. If you want more than one, there are additional copies at the back of the sanctuary. If you don't think you will use the information sheet, please return it to the table in the back of the sanctuary so we may use it at another time. Thank you so much. On Saturday, the 27th, this coming Saturday, at 8 o'clock, our beloved President John Isham is hosting a grounds cleanup party. So come while the air is still cool. 8 o'clock. We'll go to about 11:30, and I heard rumors that there will be pizza. So come and we'll be doing work around the building.
Reverend Fred, is there anything we should bring?
Yeah, tools.
Like gloves or tools?
Where is John? Well, I don't know the answer. You're going to have to wait till after the service to find out. but seek out John Isham. Okay. Our prelude, which is It Might As Well Be Spring by Richard Rogers. I'd like to call up A.J. Wolf, a member of our board of directors, to light our chalice. Please join in our chalice lighting words in the order of service. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Together we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. I'm seeing that we have new paintings on the wall of birds, which will become significant when I begin my opening words, by Terry Tempest Williams. I pray to the birds. I pray to the birds because I believe they will carry the messages of my heart upward. I pray to them because I believe in their existence, the way their songs begin and end each day, the invocations and the benedictions of earth. I pray to the birds because they remind me of what I love rather than what I fear. And at the end of my prayers, they teach me how to listen. Our opening hymn this morning is number 174, O Earth, You Are Surpassing Fair. Please rise in body or spirit. We have a responsive reading in our order of service. It should be in your order of service printed out, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. We are earth. Remember you are this universe, and this universe is you. We are earth. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. We are earth. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. Our choir is going to sing Out of the Stars. The words are found in our hymnal, number 530, in the back of the gray hymnal. You may read along.
Dust of eternity, here have we come. Stardust and sunlight mingling through time and through space. Out of the stars have we come, up from time. Rose to
My childhood education would sometimes include field trips into New York City to go to museums, Broadway shows, Empire State Building. While many trips have receded into vague memories, one that remains is the approach into the city. The air pollution was such that as one approached the city, all one could see as a sign of getting close was this blue purplish haze that hovered over the city. We called it smog. The air was so polluted that one could not clearly see the tall skyscrapers. Even in the countryside of New York State, where I grew up as a child, the air pollution would get thick, especially in the summer. We would go to the highest points in our region and look out across the land and see this blue haze that draped the hills like a heavy quilt blanket. It was an oppressive quilt in the heat. It was only after a rainstorm that lasted for a few days that the haze would disappear. On those days when we went to those highest points in our region, we could see the New York City skyline 90 miles away. I used to think that if we could cease factory smokestacks and gas-guzzling cars, the rain would wash the air clean and keep it clean. It was after such rainstorms that I enjoyed walking into the woods on my grandparents' property the best. The air smelled differently after a rainstorm. It had a sweetness to it. I think this must have been what Eden was like. I would dream for a day when the world could become like Eden again. Such a world would mean humanity was finally in sync with nature instead of seeking to subdue it. In 1970, the first Earth Day was declared. One day a year, we would turn our focus to the condition of the earth, the amount of trash thrown on the ground, the amount of sulfur and carbon we were spewing into the air, the chemicals and the hazardous waste poured into our waters. In 1970, population growth was also the most pressing concern. In the history of humanity, the world population hit 1 billion in 1804. 123 years later, it doubled to 2 billion in 1927. In 48 years, it doubled again to 4 billion in 1975. By 2025, just 6 short years away, the world's population will double again to 8 billion. The obvious question still unanswered is, at what point will the earth be unable to provide sufficient amounts of food to the earth's expanding population? What was also on people's mind is, what is the impact of an out-of-control population explosion of people on the ecology of the earth? These answers might depend on how we answer the question of climate change, caused in part by human ingenuity, greed, and sheer disrespect. The headline read, "Young whale starved to death with more than 88 pounds of plastic in its stomach." This might sound like a freak accident. But sadly, within weeks of this whale found dead in the Philippines, a pregnant whale washed up on the shores of Italy with 49 pounds of plastic in its stomach. And I found 8 different stories about whales who starved to death because their stomachs were filled with plastics, flip-flops, grocery bags, water bottles. But it isn't just large pieces of plastic. It is microplastics as well. Plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. A lab at Columbia University found plastic particles in shrimp guts. Shrimp that we eat. Researchers found microplastics in 114 aquatic species. Mussels, clams, fish, farmed and wild, are all contaminated with microplastics that their bodies cannot pass through their systems. Microplastics in Italy were found in soda and tap water. Microplastics were also found in human stool. Microplastics will break down into even smaller parts, nanoplastics, that are so tiny as to pass into the bloodstream and then end up in the liver. They do not know what the health impact of microplastics might be on the human body. But it isn't just microplastics, it is the chemicals and heavy metals that adhere to the microplastics that are also a concern for living things. And it's also what animals ingest, and then we ingest. And then the microplastics and nanoplastics that we might ingest or breathe directly. In the remote mountains of the Pyrenees in southern France, found that microplastics were raining down, covering the ground. What was curious about this was that there was no immediate source for these microplastics within 60 miles. It is believed that trade winds from the Sahara Desert carried these particles thousands of miles. Bottom line is our trash is killing the earth. We are facing the largest mass extinction event since the dinosaurs. Climatologists have given us less than 12 years to reverse course in fossil fuel consumption or face cataclysmic weather changes, massive droughts, fires, floods, hurricanes, and rising sea levels. It may already be too late. Our use of pesticides and herbicides are killing the earth's natural pollinators, the bees. Without them, our plant food sources will die. Our disposable approach to consumer goods is already threatening the animals. Our egocentric society places the world in jeopardy with no concern how our behaviors, our mass consumer-oriented society, affect not just other people, but our other co-inhabitants of this planet. What steps can we take to reverse course? I remember how the rain would scrub the air of its pollutants. I remember the day when I read that sturgeon were returning to the Hudson River years after that river was deemed too polluted to maintain fish. Efforts to clean up the river paid off, and the river came back to life. It took government intervention and regulations on dumping toxins into the waterways, but the river came back to life. Our current administration has repealed many of the protections of our waterways that support clean waters. The only reason to repeal these environmental protections is to increase the profit margins of the industries that abuse the earth. The coal industry is one of them, an industry that belongs to another time and place and should be placed into the pages of history. We need to stop being self-centered on what is most convenient for business and profit margins and begin to realize that we are not only share this planet with other species, our very existence depends on their survival. The earth has an amazing ability to regain its ecological balance. The trick is for us as a species to live to see that day. Because unless we change course, our planet will find a way to rid itself of the human virus that is making it sick. We need the earth far more than the earth needs us to survive. So here are some thoughts that I found that could, if we actively support them, will reduce carbon in our atmosphere and restore balance to the ecology of this planet, restoring it to the Eden it once was. The forests and tropical jungles are the lungs of the earth. Our deforestation of the rainforest is having grave impact on our weather patterns. Rainfall in Central America decreased because the rainforests of the Amazon have been removed and no longer releasing moisture into the air. What happens in one part of the world does impact what happens elsewhere. Trees remove carbon from the atmosphere and release oxygen. Carbon removal from the air is crucial to a balanced, in-sync weather system. Right now, we have more carbon entering the atmosphere than is being removed. Planting trees is one way to increase the amount of carbon removal from the atmosphere. The U.S. cuts down 1 billion trees a year to produce paper. The process results in 120 billion tons of carbon released into the air and 3 million tons of chlorine into our water supply annually. The U.S. consumes about a third of the world's paper. There is a better way. Recycling paper is helpful in reducing the number of trees cut down, but paper made from trees can only be recycled about 3 times. We have the ability to make paper from hemp. Paper made from hemp can be recycled about 8 times and is processed with hydrogen peroxide, which breaks down into water and oxygen. 1 acre of hemp can create as much paper as 4 acres of trees. Hemp grows faster, and therefore that acre of land can be harvested dozens of times while waiting for the acre of trees to reach maturity. More land can be reverted to forests, not for harvesting, but for earth preservation. We need to ensure that the hemp prohibition imposed by the tree paper industry back in the early 1920s is repealed. Trees are essential for carbon reclamation, and they are needed in cities. There are architects in Milan, Italy, that have built vertical forests, residential buildings, with hundreds of trees and shrubs on the outside of the buildings with specially made planters. In Luzhou, China, they are expanding this concept to create such a city that is expected to absorb 10,000 tons of carbon per year. 28 countries in the Paris Climate Agreement have committed to use forests and wetlands to reclaim large amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. Not only can forests capture carbon from the atmosphere, but so can the ocean. Protecting all life on this planet is also an essential strategy for carbon reclamation. Sea otters along the west coast are among the top of the food chain there, feeding on sea urchins, which in recent years have exploded in population. Sea otters along the west coast for a number of years had all but disappeared. Sea urchins feed on kelp. Kelp is a carbon catcher, removing carbon from the atmosphere. By ensuring a healthy sea otter population, they can make sure the sea urchins are kept in check and allow the kelp to flourish. Whales and other marine animals also store carbon within them. When they die and sink to the ocean floor, they carry carbon to be trapped on the ocean floor with them. They also add nutrients to the water through their excrement at the surface that supports the tiny phytoplankton to grow. These tiny plants use sunlight and carbon dioxide to grow, and in so doing remove carbon from the atmosphere and then eaten by fish. It is going to be vital for us to find ways to support life of other species, not just for food sources, but as part of a strategy to ensure our survival on this planet. This means having larger nature preserves, no-hunt zones, to ensure that these species, be they mammal, fish, reptilian, amphibian, insects, or vegetation, can and will thrive. Our technology has improved to more than begin moving away from fossil fuels to renewable energies. Contrary to our president's ignorant beliefs, wind turbines do not cause cancer. Solar panels are another up-and-coming technology that is improving rapidly in its ability to store energy. There are states that are seeking to be 100% renewable energy over the next several decades. Vermont's Green Mountain Power, which serves 75% of the state, is aiming at 100% carbon-free by 2025 and 100% renewable by 2030. Other states have created their own timelines to be carbon-free. These things are necessary if we want our grandchildren's grandchildren, our grandchildren's grandchildren, to enjoy the beauty and wonder of this planet that we have. We need to find ways to act in concert with the earth because our survival depends on it. The interconnected web of life is not just a nice philosophical statement. It is a reality of how life works on this planet. It is time we realize the interconnection in our daily lives to create the Eden dream. Blessed be. We come now to a time of prayers of our community. We received word yesterday that Mary Malakowski died in hospice. We light this candle to honor the light that is and will always be Mary in our hearts. Please hold Richard Kirby and their family in your thoughts and prayers. Clara Weiss states that she's joyful that she spent time the last 4 days in the Catskills of New York with her family, celebrating the memory of her late 99-year-old father. They sang, played music, and told stories of a wonderful man. Zeta Merrill had called from her new home in Phoenix. She says happy spring to everyone, and she would love to hear from us. She is also singing in a choir there as a tenor, she says. Yesterday, Chuck Wolf was at the hospital. He phoned Peg Dixon. His foot was injured, not broken, just sprained. So he's at home recuperating. There are 3 religious holidays within the Abrahamic faith traditions that converge this weekend. Our Jewish friends are celebrating Passover. Our Christian friends are celebrating Easter. And our Baha'i friends are celebrating Ridvan. But this Easter is also a painful time for many. 3 black churches were burned to the ground in Louisiana because of hatred. And an icon of France, the Cathedral Notre Dame, was nearly destroyed by fire. And then this morning, 3 churches celebrating Easter Mass in Sri Lanka were bombed. Over 200 people were killed. May we keep these people in our thoughts, in prayers, as they seek to rebuild and seek to recover and grieve their loss. There are many who aren't able to be with us and might enjoy a note in the mail, a phone call, a visit. If you notice someone who is not here today, please make a point to reach out to them this week. Let them know we are thinking of them and that we care about them. Let us hold these joys and sorrows and those they have not yet found expression in our hearts in a time of silence. May our hearts be inspired to offer support to one another. Let's do that for about a minute of silent meditation. Blessed be. I'd like to call Sally, Isham, and Corey forward. They have a special joy that they would like to share in appreciation.
So we would like to call Will forward and Barbara forward and thank them on behalf of the choir and the congregation for their service to us this season.
We say in our church that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is that we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves, to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and do to live out our shared values. Every week we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of this fellowship. Our plate then, as it is passed among us, becomes filled with the evidence of that generosity. It is our harvest, gathered in every week for what most nourishes us. The ushers will now come among you to receive the gifts of the congregation, while Barbara plays Younger Than Springtime. This morning offering will be most gratefully received. Our closing hymn this morning is number 266, Now the Green Blade Riseth. Please rise in body or spirit. Please be seated. And again, I call A.J. Wolf forward to extinguish our chalice. Please join in reading our extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.